Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jacob. Welcome back to the show. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a senior acquisitions manager and mentor with wholesalingoutofthebox.com. And if you're listening to me, then you should know that this is another episode of our director's commentary. So we have a really good call to break down today. We have what sounds like a very motivated seller that is interested in selling his rental property. And the interesting thing about this one is that the numbers don't actually work. And that's really important here because the motivation is there. But what we find as the call progresses is that it just doesn't make sense. And that's why I wanted to share this call with you guys, because I don't care if you're new or experienced, when you hear motivation on the phone, especially right off the bat, as early as it happens in this particular call, then the same thing happens to all of us. And that's, we get super excited. And for good reason, right? Because when we hear motivation, the first thing that we think is, we've got a deal. And that's awesome, right? At the same time, it's really important that we recognize that emotion and that we put that to the side and continue qualifying the call just like we would with any other call. And that's really why I wanted to share this particular call with you today, is because of the fact that it's really about qualifying. And Shawn does a really good job of getting the seller to open up and to discuss the entirety of the potential deal, so to speak, and the property and what he's going through and what the issues are. And it's just a really good call. It's a really good call for qualifying. Additionally, it's also a very good call for the psychology behind how Shawn asks and how he goes about that. So really great stuff coming forward. I hope you guys brought your scuba gear because we're going to deep dive the heck out of this one. Going to do it a little bit differently today. Historically speaking, I always play the, I start the call, I play a certain portion of it, and then I pause it and then review the last few minutes to make sure that you guys were able to capture everything there. I started thinking over the weekend that maybe that's not necessarily the best way of doing it. So what I would like to do today is I would like to play the call all the way through for you the first time around. And this one's relatively short. It's only about 9.5 minutes. So what I'll do is I will play the entirety of the phone call, and then at the end of the call, I will come back on and I will go through basically every minute of it and talk about all of the tactics that Shawn uses and why they work, how they work, and so on, and just talk about the call as a whole. So, and I'm hoping that in doing that, this will allow you guys to listen to it one time through, kind of have your own takeaway from it, and then anything additional that I talk about after the fact and maybe point out, hopefully will just be helpful to you. And hopefully you'll have seen that and recognized it first time around, but if for whatever reason you didn't, then you'll be able to hear me recap it at the end. So at the end of the call, guys, if you would, please give me feedback on what your thoughts are on this approach as opposed to the previous one. Because as always, I do this for you guys, and I try to do it so that you guys are able to come away with as much learning and as much information as possible. So any feedback you can provide in the comments section, that would be greatly appreciated. One final thing before we get in, as always, these call breakdowns are meant to serve as an example only. We're not experts, we are not perfect, but that being said, we've had some really great experiences over the years, and we felt like those experiences were worth sharing. Because there's a heck of a lot to be learned from people that came before you, right? We all do it. So we're hoping that that's what happens here. Lastly, I say this every time, but if you are not recording your calls currently, please check your state and country guidelines and start doing that. I cannot express enough how great it is to be able to go back and listen to yourself talk and find and identify some of those weak points so that you can improve on them and tweak it and get better as you move forward. Incredibly important to the learning process when it comes to acquisitions and sales in general. That's all I got. We'll go ahead and get into the call. Hope you enjoy it.
Afternoon, Shawn speaking.
Yes, how you doing, Sean? I'm calling. I just pulled up your ad online, and I'm looking to sell my house, man. I'm seeing how that will work. I got a place in Virginia Beach that I've been currently renting for a couple of years, but I'm going to get out of it right now.
Okay. And it's something that you own personally?
No, I still got a note on it.
Oh, okay. All right. And you said it is vacant, or you have a tenant in it?
It's vacant now. I've been working on it for all weekend. I've been working on that place.
You said all weekend?
Well, yeah, Friday and Saturday. I just got it back.
Oh, you mean cleaning it out?
Yeah, cleaning it out.
Oh, okay. I was like, damn.
Oh, no, shit, I will.
Doing work on the weekend, like, making it happen, all right.
Yeah, I'm looking
at
it. And I don't know how, I'm not pressed for it, but I've been playing for it for the last 7 months. And I don't have I don't have the time to go over there and keep fixing it back.
Sure. So can you tell me a little bit about what's going on with it? Like, what kind of fix-up?
Well, no, it's not. I mean, it's cosmetic stuff now, man. I mean, it's not like that, man. I mean, I used to live in that place years ago, but it's up to date, man. Laminate floors. I put new carpet in there last 2 years before I put a runner back in there. Even though she put some paint on the floor, paint on the carpet upstairs, but the bathrooms haven't been upgraded, but the kitchen's been completely upgraded. Instead of all the thing was the cabinets haven't been done. There's new appliances in there. Well, I mean not new, but they're newer. They're 6-7 years, but they're all good appliances. There's ceramic tile in the kitchen. The floors, like I say, have just been done a couple of years ago. There's a full deck on the back. There's no grass in the backyard. There's a full entertainment deck on the back. What else on that place? I'm doing the front. I'm redoing the flower beds in the front. That's the last thing I'm gonna do. Well, not the last thing, but other little cleanup stuff. But that's about it, man. Well, it's a nice place. It's 2.5, two bedrooms, 2.5 bath. In Virginia Beach, it's walking distance to Salem Middle and Salem High.
Okay, is it a townhome or
is it a townhouse?
Detached?
It's townhome.
Okay. What neighborhood is it in?
You said a neighborhood is in?
What neighborhood is it in?
What is that? It's called Rosemont Forest, but it's off Glen Haven. I don't know if I'm familiar with you know what Crossroads the bar at?
What is it?
Haven. It's called Crossroads. There's a bar called Crossroads.
No.
You know what Salem Middle School is?
Yep.
It's on that same side, but in that neighborhood.
Okay. You said Forest Wood?
Well, no, it's called Rosemont Forest, but I can give you the address, man, if you want to look it up.
Oh, okay. What's the address?
13.
So we've got a townhome. It's pretty much everything's up to date. Doesn't really need a lot of fix up.
It's not a lot of cosmetic stuff, man. If I wanted to really try to get top value, I'd probably do all the vanities in the bathrooms, and that would be it. I mean, truth be told, that from my point of view, because I mean, I've been doing the deck. The deck is I mean, you can look online because I always had the rental pictures out there. You can see what I haven't been out there lately, but that's from the last time I rented out. That was 2 years ago, but I've been back and forth with this girl that had it for so much for bankruptcy. I pulled a whole bunch of, that go through a bunch of attorney fees, and I don't feel like going back over there and fix it up. So I want to sell it, but if I can get somebody to give a good value and get out the loan, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm looking at Trulio right now. That's the one from last year, 2 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not in front of my computer at the moment. So what's the get out of jail free card?
Get out of free jail card, man. 140, bro. I mean, that's close. Okay. I got a VA loan, so closing costs. They can help me out with closing costs and stuff like. But to get out of jail free card is 140, bro. I'm not gonna be. I mean, shit, hell, it might be 130 something now. I gotta look again, but I'm sure it was 140 the last time I looked.
Okay. It sounds like that might be close to a retail. How come you're not gonna list it?
Man, I just put it like this, man. I just don't want to deal with it, man. I'm trying to see if I can get someone to go that way, but Man, I'll be Chesapeake. I got too much work to do in my damn house. To be honest, my pool is green. I just ain't got it right now, man. So I went over there Friday and Saturday. My son was over there Friday and Saturday, so I'll probably go back over there on Thursday and do a little bit more stuff and keep doing it too. For another 2 months, I'll try to figure it out what I'm gonna do because I really don't want to rent it back out. I don't want to rent it back out. I'd rather be able to go ahead and sell it, but I'm not gonna. I've been going almost a year paying this mortgage, so that's where I'm at. So I'm just calling around. I have a couple other guys. I had a friend talk to me about it. I said I'm just calling people now. If I hear something that I like, or I'm just playing it by ear. But I mean, if you want to take a look, you let me know. I'll get over there.
Okay. So the get out of jail, be done with it, no more headaches, and the payoff is $140?
$140, man. I can look on Navy Federal and see what it is, but I'm pretty sure it's $140. I don't know if I'm at $130, but I know I looked a month ago. I think it was $140, man. I'll look at it right now.
Is that what things are selling for around there? Sounds like it's close to retail.
Yeah, but $150, I haven't looked because I mean the comp. I think the comp around there is about $145, $150. I think that's the comp around there. I haven't looked at it online in a while, but.
All right. So if you can't get that number, what happens next?
Well, at 140. Oh man.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to short sell that thing. It's 140, 128. That's what's on there right now. I don't know how much lower I can go for. I can to cover up the remaining. I don't know.
Right. So if you couldn't sell it, meaning, like, let's say you had to put it online and get rid of it. Because, like I said, I mean, I'm not in front of numbers right now. I'm just listening to you talk. So if we can help you, like, if you can't sell it for 140 because there's no room or spread or profit there for us to do that,
right.
What's the lowest you'll go?
I don't know, man. Man, shit. To be honest, I wouldn't try to go 135. That's what. But I don't want to cover up no more than $5,000 in that house because it's already in my pockets right now. And at 135, I'll make up that 5. Someone have to short sale it. That's probably, to be honest, that's probably the lowest I can really swing on my side. But my money I don't put into it.
Okay. Well, I guess let me get back to the office and I'll take some look at it and see if I can do anything.
Okay.
I mean, just from what you're telling me, it sounds like it's close to retail. Needs a little bit of work. Doesn't sound like it needs a lot.
No, it don't, man. It doesn't. I mean, if it was a place that had needed a ton of work, man, I wouldn't even bother. I mean, I know y'all guys trying to make a profit, and you know, if like I say, if I do the work, I'm gonna push it up to 150. I'm gonna try to get something from it. I'm gonna try to at least get what I not paid for it. I know because it's a lot of rental property over there now. So, you know, but yeah.
And what was that address again?
13.
Got it.
Yeah, this is my work number, but if you call it, it's not gonna. Damn government phones never work. But I mean, I can give you my number, man. If you
got it.
Yeah, let me
take a look at it, man, and see what makes sense. And I'll give you a ring back. I appreciate the call.
All right, thanks, man.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to start off, guys, by pretty much recapping, and I'm just going to start right at the beginning of the call here. So right from the get-go, this guy calls and pretty much immediately comes out of the gate and says, I just want to get rid of it. So in the first minute, we hear Shawn immediately follow up with, this is something that you own personally? Question mark, right? And the intent behind Shawn's question here was literally just to simply verify that he is actually, in fact, talking to the owner. And we got a little bit of a bonus with that one because instead of just verifying that information, the seller actually offered a completely different answer, and he came right out and said that he still has a note. He still has a mortgage that he has to pay off. So we got a little bit more than what the initial intent of the question was, which is pretty awesome. That doesn't happen very often, but it's pretty clear that this guy's a talker. He's motivated, really wants to get out of it. Really important question that Shawn follows up with is the property vacant or do you have a tenant? This is critical when we're talking about rentals. We have to know, is the property vacant or is there a tenant? Because if there's a tenant, there are so many additional questions that need to come after that. And I could give them away, but I'm going to save those for a different day. But there's a lot of follow-up questions when you have to consider that a tenant is still living in the property, right? You have to worry about how you're going to get them out of there and what that looks like when the lease ends, all of those types of things, right? So in this case, we hear that the property is vacant, so it's nothing that we have to worry about. But that is why Shawn is clarifying vacant or tenant. After that, he immediately starts mirroring. He goes, the seller starts talking about how much clean out he's been doing, how much work he's been doing. And Shawn mirrors right off the bat. Clean out? You're cleaning out? And then they have a good laugh about that over the weekend, right? Shawn's like, oh shit, man. Like, oh damn, you know? It sounds like you're doing a hell of a lot of work. So, initial part of the conversation, right? We're asking questions, digging for critical pieces of information, and then while we're doing that, we're building rapport. That's exactly what Shawn is doing in the first minute of the call. The laughing aspect of it, right there, you can tell that you're already building rapport. If you're getting laughter with the seller, you're probably off on the right start. So, as always, guys, introduction to the call, right? What do we want to talk about? We want to talk about the who, the what, and the why. Now, we're 1 minute in, and Shawn he's got who, and he's gotten quite a bit about the why, and now it's the what, right? So the next part of the conversation naturally is always going to lead into, can you tell me a little bit about what's going on, right? What's the condition? What does the property look like? What's going on with it? What's wrong with it? Those types of questions, right? We want to talk about the condition of the home. So immediately we start going down that path, right? So as the gentleman starts talking about the repairs and everything that he's doing, he starts talking about how basically there's, it's not that bad, right? There's some things that need to be addressed, but it's not crazy. So as the call continues, we start talking about what the address is. We get that piece of information, which of course is critical, especially when you're not sitting in front of your computer. We need that stuff, right? And guys, this is another example and reason to record your calls, because I have been in plenty of conversations where I have not been in a position where I can write down the address of a property. Maybe I'm driving, maybe I'm just out and about with my wife or with my family, friends, right? I don't have the ability to write this down. So I can go back after the fact and I can listen to the call recording. And that's awesome. It's amazing to be able to go back and do that and to not have to worry about it. So just another tidbit as far as reasons to record calls. That's just a bonus. So what happens, right? We get the address, we start talking more, and then Shawn summarizes what's been said at this point. So he's mirrored, he's gotten additional information, he's asked a couple of open-ended questions at the beginning, right? Can you tell me more about what's going on? Open-ended question. And mirrored to get the seller to open up about what he was doing with the property over the weekend. And now he's summarizing. And this is great. What he's doing in this case is he's basically taking what the seller has just told him and he's summarizing all of that to make sure that he is on the same page. And at the same time, what this does is it actually invites the seller psychologically to continue. And that's the beautiful part about some of these phrases and some of these tactics, because the summarization of what the seller said just invites him to give more. It invites him to verify what he did say, and then it invites him to add to that. So that's exactly what happens. So looking for agreement, right? Looking for the verification that we are on the same page before we continue to move on eventually with the here's what I think can be done, right? Very, very important that we get that piece first. 4 minutes, 33 seconds into the call. This was fun. A lot of people, when we talk about price, right, this is the uncomfortable part of the discussion. People clam up, people get a little tense, right? Nobody likes to negotiate hard numbers. It usually makes most people feel uncomfortable. So, but this is fun because you get to hear Shawn play with that a little bit. So instead of the normal, hey, what would it look like for you to walk away from this? Or what are you hoping to get, right? What's your asking price? Instead of asking it that way, which is, it's fine to ask it that way, but instead, based on the rapport that he's building and based on the type of seller that he has, what's he say instead? What's the get out of jail free card? That is great. That's awesome. He's playing with it. He's having fun, and he knows that the seller is going to respond probably, pretty similarly, right, as far as the understanding is concerned. So really cool to see that, and then to know that for you guys moving forward. You don't always have to be super professional. You don't always have to be a robot when you're on the phone. In fact, you will likely find that the response that you're going to get from a seller is going to be infinitely better when you're just being real and when you are having fun, because the seller can sense that too, and that's really important. So immediately after the get out of jail free card, seller comes back with $140,000. Shawn immediately labels again immediately after that. Sounds like that might be retail. How come you're not going to list it? Sounds like that might be close to retail. How come you're not going to list it? Again, the label prompts the sellers psychologically to give more information. And that's exactly what we hear. And he labels and immediately follows up with the open-ended question, right? A lot of people ask, I get this all the time, Jacob, why would I ever want to ask a seller if they're interested in listing a property retail? Okay, so let's be honest, right? The seller knows what their options are. This is not a secret, right? I know that if I'm going to sell a property, I'm probably going to consider listing it before I do anything else, especially if I'm inexperienced in the real estate world. So by you asking or labeling and asking how come you're not going to list it with a realtor, you're not giving up any information or any option that the seller doesn't already know that they have. So what that does is it helps you qualify what you have even more, right? Because if you go to a seller and you don't ask these questions and they start talking about a deal that sounds retail, then don't you think it would be helpful to know what the reason is that they don't want to work with a realtor or work with an agent? It seems like that piece of information would be extremely useful. And what that does in this case is it helps identify the why and the motivation in addition to what the seller has already said. So it builds on the motivation and the why. It builds on why the seller needs to move forward as quickly as he does, because it identifies the reasons that he doesn't want to do certain things. So incredibly important. Really good question. And if you haven't asked those types of things before, when a deal sounds like it's retail, you definitely should, because it's going to get you more information and potentially more motivation moving forward. Or you're going to realize that, hey, okay, so maybe they come back and they just say, oh, well, I hadn't really thought about it yet. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, based on what you're telling me, it kind of sounds like that might be in your best interest here. I don't know, right? I'm just hearing you talk. At the end of the day, guys, it still comes back to you're solving a problem that the seller has. And you have to keep in mind and you have to be okay with the fact that the vast majority of the time, that solution that you end up coming up with the seller is probably not really going to end in a wholesale deal. It might not end in a rehab. It probably will end in a retail sale, or it might not end in anything. You might not take it any further at all. And you have to be okay with that. The whole point of doing this business is to look out for the seller, genuinely. We're not just here to collect a paycheck. Yes, money is important. No question about it. We all need to get paid. We all need to make a living. But at the end of the day, every single conversation that you have with the seller should be about trying to understand what it is they are trying to do and what the issue is and whether you can actually solve it. And then you should be doing whatever that looks like to move forward in that fashion. So with us, if we qualify a sale and we find that it's a retail sale, we're going to go and refer that to the associate broker that we work with, right? And we'll still collect a fee for basically handing the lead over, right? So things to keep in mind, if you're new, if these are things that you haven't thought of, you can do those things, right? So we still get paid on those, but it's still about helping the seller and doing what's best for them. It's not about always doing what's best for us. Okay, the only time that we actually wholesale a deal is when it makes sense for both parties, right? It has to make sense for both parties. So keep that in mind moving forward, guys, especially if you're new. Okay, so how come you're not going to list it? What ends up coming out of that is the seller says, I just don't want to deal with it. And then from that point on, it's pain, 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 right? All we're listening to is pain. And that's what we want. We want that conversation with the seller because that is the real problem that we have to solve, is the pain. So after that, we're 6 minutes, 11 seconds into the call. Shawn gives a second summary that is almost identical to his previous summary. Literally almost word for word. Except he has one key additive, or a couple key additives. He adds the get out of jail, and then adds the be done with it, no headache, that's 140,000. So summarizes, 5,000 foot view. Okay, so what you're saying is that the get out of jail, be done with it, no stress, no headache, we deal with all that, right? That's 140, right? Yeah, that's 140. And again, the summary and the label allows the seller to just keep opening up. And that's exactly what Shawn wants, and that's what we want as the acquisitions person on the phone. So these labels and these summaries and these open-ended questions and mirrors are really, really powerful stuff, guys, when you use them in the correct point in the conversation. So we get that, right? We get further clarification. Yep, it's 140. But even the seller at this point is sitting there going, well, maybe it's not 140. Maybe I can do less, right? So the point of this is to get the seller to solve his own problem. And then immediately thereafter, Shawn follows up with, is that what things are selling for around there? That's a good question, right? Sounds like retail. All right, so what you're telling me is that get out of jail free card's 140 grand, right? Be done with it, no headache, 140 grand? Really? Is that what things are selling for? Well, yeah, it looks like houses are selling for about 145, 150. Okay, so if that's the case, then we probably are talking about retail. So Shawn says it again, right? So he mirrored, right? He asked an open-ended question. He summarized. And then he summarized a second time. And then he asked a target question, right? Asked is this what things are selling for around there? And then he labels again and says the exact same thing. Kind of sounds like it's still close to retail. Literally almost the same exact sentence. Sounds like it's close to retail. Seller just keeps talking, keeps talking, keeps talking. And all the while, in doing this, all Shawn is really doing is he's getting the seller to solve his own problem. Because at the end of the day, guys, we're not going to sell anybody anything, right? We can't. I don't have that power over you. You don't have that power over somebody else. At the end of the day, they have to decide for themselves whether or not they want to move forward with you. So you do that by making them solve their own problem, but you do that by asking questions certain ways and labeling certain things and getting them to open up and discuss it. And that's exactly what happens in this call. So what happens every time Shawn says the label sounds like it's close to retail? What he's really doing here is he's asking the seller to justify why 140,000 makes sense, right? And that's the important piece, and that's what I'm saying that's what I mean when I say this is the seller solving his own problem. Because we already know the 140 is too high. Shawn knows 140 is too high. So, but does the seller know that? Or is this just a number that he's starting with? Vast majority of people, right, are just going to try to negotiate, so they're going to start high, knowing that they're probably going to have to come down. So, what's the floor? And as the conversation progresses, that's exactly where we get to. And you hear Shawn ask, what happens if you can't get that number? Key question, guys. Key question. What happens if you can't make this work? So if you can't get 140,000 because there's no profit or spread for us, you know, whatever that looks like, what's the lowest you'll go? Seller. 135. Probably. I don't even want to go 135, but I probably could. Right? Shawn he's said practically nothing throughout the entire call. Practically nothing. And here you see the seller, hear the seller negotiating with themselves. That's really what's happening. And it's insane, right? Literally insane to hear. So, let's see here. Shawn summarizes and labels one more time at 8 minutes 11 seconds in. He recaps the entire conversation basically in 2 to 3 sentences. And then at 8:50, the seller gives the address one more time for clarification, and then a personal cell phone number, and the call ends, right? And then we obviously have the follow-up from Shawn to agree to take a harder look and see if there's anything that can actually be done because he wasn't in front of his computer, right? So, guys, a lot of people would look at what Shawn did here as a negotiation, right? A lot of people would look at it in the sense of like, oh, I see what he's doing. He's just trying to get a lower number. I mean, yeah, he's trying to get a lower number, but not really. What Shawn is really trying to do is he's trying to understand whether or not this actually makes sense. Because from the get-go, it doesn't, right? I mean, we hear it's a retail sale. Right from the get-go, it sounds like a retail sale. So it's not about trying to get a lower number. A lot of people think that when they hear this kind of thing for the first time around, and that's just not what it's about. It's about qualifying the lead, and it's about trying to genuinely understand if what the seller is looking for or what they're trying to do actually fits and matches what we can do and whether or not we can help them. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That is the most that I can probably say about this call. I hope that this was helpful for you. I know I went through a couple of loops myself on that. But again, guys, this stuff is easy and it's real and it's learnable. This isn't something that you just have to be scared of all the time. You can go and you can listen to calls like Shawn's. You can listen to your own calls. You can tweak yourself moving forward and you can improve. When I first started, I was awful at talking to sellers. I had no idea how to do it. No idea. And that happens to the vast majority of us when we first start in this business. We just have no clue. Be okay with that. It's okay. It's okay not to be great when you first start. That's where we all start, guys. And I promise you, if you listen to this stuff, if you listen to the books like Never Split the Difference, if you take some of these things to heart and you try it, you will get better. I have no doubt in my mind. So I really hope this was helpful, guys. If you would, please leave comments below. I would love to hear your feedback. I hope I didn't ramble too much there at the end, but there was kind of a lot to cover. So as always, thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to catching you guys on the next one. Have a good day. Talk to you soon.